Hi, this is Theresa Ryan.
And this is Emily Greentree, and today we're going to be talking about the postmodern artist, Mathew Barney.
He was born in San Francisco, California in 1967.
And his parents were divorced, so he lived with his dad in Idaho.
And his mom moved to New York, where he visited often and got to know the rapidly changing art world in the center of art of New York City.
So, interestingly enough, he starts college at Yale, freshman year, and decides he's going to be a pre-med major and be a plastic surgeon. But about a year into school, he decides, nope, art's really what he's passionate about, and he goes and he applies to the Yale Graduate School of Art, which as an undergraduate he's not supposed to be in, but a lot of the kids in his class rallied together and convinced the faculty, no, he really belongs in the graduate program.
It's actually here in his senior year at Yale that we see the beginning seeds of what will become his most famous work, the Cremaster cycle, in his senior thesis, Field Dressing. It's in his most famous works, the Cremaster cycle, that he explores a whole bunch of mediums like drawing, photography, sculpture, film, and performance.
So you can imagine all these different mediums are kind of hard to juggle. So the way Mathew Barney does his artistic process is to become the director and producer of these Cremaster cycle films, these 5 feature-length films, and when he does this, he gathers around a bunch of artists to support him. So he has photographers, sculptors, drawers, makeup artists all around him, which he tells them, this is what I'm going for, this is the look I want, and really tells them exactly what he wants, and they help him achieve it, so that he's orchestrating all of it, and what you see is what he imagines, but he necessarily isn't trying to do all 6 mediums at the same time.
Mathew Barney actually acts in his own films, becoming his own performance artist.
And these stories that he acts out have their basis in autobiographical, geographical, and mythological stories. So he basically acts out everything from, mythical fauns and their stories to Gary Gilmore and Harry Houdini and how their stories show what he's trying to portray. And he films in places like New York, where his mom's from, at the Chrysler Building, and Bronco Stadium in Idaho.
Speaking about the different places that he films in and the different conflicts and stages, brings up the idea of the cycles. He has 5 different cycles, and they range from birth to death. Although they're not supposed to be shown in that order, they do thematically string together in a development of life through conflict.
And so conflict is really what he says he's trying to focus these cycles on. So while each cycle might thematically show a different part of life's development, everyone has to deal with conflict. And so one of these conflicts is really easy to see in the dream sequence where he has these zombie horses. There are 5 of these horses, each one of them representing a different Cremaster film that he's done, and they're basically racing at the Saratoga racing track. And as they're going by, it's kind of a conflict of competitive sorts, of like life and how you're trying to race ahead and who you have to deal with. So we see in the film one horse wins but is disqualified due to an offense that he had to a different horse, making another horse the winner. So it kind of goes back and forth with life's competition.
Also in Cremaster 3, it switches back to the Guggenheim Museum, and on each level of the Guggenheim, going up the spiral, are different conflicts that Mathew Barney himself, an actor in the series, deals with as he ascends and descends the internal structure. At the top of the Guggenheim is Richard Serra, one of Mathew Barney's role models. At the top, he deals with a situation of metal workers versus architects in a performance where he is slinging hot Vaseline against a metal structure, and the Vaseline drips through the levels along the spiral, connecting all the different conflicts that Mathew Barney deals with in the movie.
Which is really cool to see, because when we look at it, we don't necessarily know that it's metal workers versus architects fighting and what this Vaseline is supposed to stand for, but we can feel the conflict, versus Mathew Barney clearly knew when he thinks that he sees the story he imagined and the backstory he knows in his brain, which is very postmodernism.
We also see the cycle in a sort of out-of-order way. We see different clips from different levels of the Guggenheim, and we know that they're connected because they're all in the same space, but we don't see it happening as a storyline altogether.
Which plays into the fact that this story and how each of these movies thematically goes with life development, he didn't film them in order of life's development. He started with 4, which is like middle-aged life, and went back to 1, and then 5, and then 2, and then 3. So it was filmed out of order of life stages, even though each one represents a different stage in life.
The way he films this really classifies him as a postmodern artist because it really leaves it up to the viewer to form the meaning of his work.
Even though he has a meaning in mind, we get to choose what we see in it, which can be anything from the conflicts we see to the life development to maybe we don't entirely get it and we think it's something else entirely. And another thing about postmodern art is really anything goes.
Yeah, and the society that he grew up in and the time really allowed for him to produce this art and not be judged.